Can you boost the gain on your mic? That's better. Can you go a little bit higher?
Yeah, I can go a lot higher.
That's
How about
probably
now?
good. Yeah, I mean you're back to normal or
That sounds
seemingly
good.
normal. Yeah.
So I can barely hear me, and now if I do the volume slider for my mic input and audio hijack, I don't hear myself anymore. But can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay, that's much better on my end. And I had two different mics recording.
Interesting.
Yeah. So so that I'm not the Casey Liss of this show, I'm gonna put my drink on a different surface. Okay.
Yeah, I might have decided that I would invest a little extra in the setup to do this, but it's only because I already had the audio interface. So I just bought like the only thing I added was the condenser mic that's a higher quality than what I had, and then the arm. Um,
Yeah, I got this Apogee mic a number of years ago, and I believe it's also a condenser mic. I don't have a screen guard for it, but we'll see how it does. I set up a bath towel behind it so that it wouldn't just to absorb as much sound as possible.
I think
So
it,
I'm hoping that's working.
yeah, I think it sounds fine. I noticed I don't have video. I did the first time. Not that it really matters.
I see video going in and out, but I don't know that video matters.
Yeah, like I've been turning it on and off randomly
Oh,
just to see what I look like. I had Emily do a couple of behind the scenes quick photos we staged earlier just to have a couple of pictures because it's like, well, why not?
That's pretty cool.
I guess while I'm sitting here, I should probably take a couple of pictures of the audio interface too, just for fun.
Yeah. I will not take a picture at this time because my little office area is kind of a mess right now. After 1 week of school, I decided I needed to change some furniture around, and I actually need to change a lot of furniture around. I have a desk that's a it's pretty cheap L-shaped desk, and it just isn't accomplishing what I want it to accomplish. So um, I ordered another desk. It should be here Friday, and I'll take this one down to my garage, take some pictures of it, and try to sell it.
Yeah, I saw a couple of pictures where it looks like you had a couple of just wall mount shelves for the kids.
Yeah, so they're a wall mount desk, and they serve their purpose pretty well. Um, you know, they uh, they have I have an what is it? I have a ThinkPad that they were getting rid of at work, and I put Ubuntu on that, and because all they need is Chrome, and then I had another desktop computer and bought a Wi-Fi card for it, and it turns out that the Wi-Fi card is only supported by Windows, and it also doesn't have a camera or microphone. So their school provided a Chromebook. I was trying to avoid that just so that anybody who really didn't have access to a computer could use it, but turns out I also needed one as well.
I guess it works out well then. I wondered kind of how they were going to handle resource allocation at this point because it seemed like it was very. I'm not going to say spur of the moment, but not overly thought out, like how they were going to implement a lot of things.
Oh no, it was spur. That's correct not to say spur of the moment, but it was very much not. Hey, we are ready for this. No, not at all like that. I mean, I think just in general,
Yeah, I'm
you could say that
certainly.
about almost every pandemic. Everyone's response to this pandemic was like not at all ready.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy we have another year before Jacob starts, just because that gives us a chance to hopefully get some semblance of a normal school year, and we'll see if that's accurate or not by the time we get there.
Yeah, when people, I talk to some people and they're like, "Yeah, everything's gonna be fine in 2021." I'm just like, how? I mean, it could be, but we don't know that.
Yeah, the reality of just research and vaccines and everything else. Like I don't think we're going to be looking at a normal lifestyle for certainly longer than that. I guess we'll see. I don't trust any of the recent like fast track approval items that I've seen in the headlines either.
Like Russia's fast track or US's fast track,
Well,
because I feel like those are slightly different.
I'm not so sure they're that different. um, I mean, I certainly don't trust Russia's, but like I saw was it the FDA declared that they would allow an emergency exception for fast tracking the approval of the vaccine, technically pre-conclusion of clinical trials, which to me sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, I feel like thankfully I wouldn't be on the list of the first one to get the vaccine. Like there are other people that are gonna need it more than you or I. But yeah, like the skipping of phase two makes sense to me because phase two is sort of covered in phase three. It's just phase two saves some money, so that makes sense. But I don't know much more beyond that.
Yeah, I think a large part of my skepticism is just I don't understand the entire process. I get that there's a process and I get that there are phases for different reasons and I kind of generally understand them, but I haven't done the research to say, okay, I understand what actually is different between phase two, phase three, and what that actually means for the end product.
Yeah, well, I mean, time will tell. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that polio vaccine was being rushed in the days of the polio vaccine, but they didn't get it right the first time, and they had to rework the polio vaccine because the initial vaccine caused some issues. So I don't know. I don't know. It's like there's a lot of political pressure right now on science, and in a bad way.
I was going to say, I don't even know if you could describe it honestly as political pressure. I think it's just entirely political discourse.
Yeah, yeah. See, like when Dr. Fauci talks about there being a vaccine possibly at the end of this year, that feels really. I got to say feel because I don't know, but it just feels too quick. Feels rushed. And I know they're working really hard, and even if they get a vaccine out in 18 months or 2 years' time, it will be one of mankind's greatest um, achievements. But having a vaccine by the end of the year seems it's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lean toward the thought of the end of the year being more like a flu shot than a vaccine, where it's a kind of just this is the most likely thing to invoke an appropriate immune response, and an actual vaccine is still a year plus.
Yeah.
But
I,
I'm not a medical professional, so
well, I remember talking to someone, and it's like who says it won't be anything more than a flu type vaccine, where it has to be every year. It's like it may not be the MMR style vaccine where you take it once and you're good to go. There's just so many unknowns.
I think that's the biggest reason I've continued to err on the side of caution is because they're realistically, I don't think there's any potential for properly being able to be immunized from this strain at this time. I think was it a week ago or so where it was the first confirmed case of reinfection in Hong Kong. It may have been a little bit longer than that. Like I've certainly lost track of time at this point, as far as news headlines go. But even though the secondary infection was asymptomatic, like it makes me really think that this is either you're going to get it and have severe complications or not, regardless of the state of a vaccine. And so it's more a matter of, well, we're going to see what happens when you finally get it. And even if we have a flu shot or a vaccine type response, it's still just kind of a shot in the dark.
No pun intended?
Yeah.
Or is that a different kind of shot?
At this point, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw some things where I think this was like a late July article, and it talked about I'll go back before this particular article. I remember reading an article. It was probably around May, and the article claimed that you couldn't be reinfected with COVID-19, or you couldn't be reinfected by the new coronavirus, and then that was retracted, or not retracted, but new evidence came out showing that you could be reinfected. And then this article I read, and this was all those two articles were based on the persistence of antibodies or detectable antibodies in a recovered patient. And then an article at the end of July came out talking about T-cell immunity, and there's a belief that you could retain T-cell immunity for maybe decades. There was a person that was tested for the first SARS virus, and they still had T-cells from an infection that was over 17 years ago. So if somehow a vaccine can trigger a T-cell immunity response, and I use that phrase because I don't understand immunology, but basically if you could have T-cells respond and fight the virus, then there could be a long-lasting immune response, but who knows? It's still being studied. I mean, there's going to be a whole groups of scientists that are going to spend the rest of their lives researching this one virus.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I find fascinating about just the public discourse in general, is that people don't understand that what they're watching is literally the scientific method play out in real time.
Mm-hmm. I've had this exact thought.
Like, I enjoy seeing it from the standpoint of being able to actually understand the ramifications from day to day. I hate seeing it from the standpoint of press / media coverage / public perception.
Yeah. I mean, I think this was already, if you've had any sort of like understanding of science, or like if you were able to watch a good quality science show like the one Neil deGrasse Tyson did that Carl Sagan did before him, was that The Universe?
I think so. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember for sure if that was the title.
Or Nova, man. If you just watch Nova and could understand the scientific method from Nova, sitting around, and I mean, it was clear that we knew that science education in this country is not at its best, and this just confirms that folks don't know how science is conducted. How I don't know if it's messy, but science isn't messy, but it's like new data trumps old data, and when you have so little information and you have so much data coming in, it looks like a big mess. It looks like nobody can agree on, or big groups of people can't agree on things, whereas folks are used to science that's been around for decades. They're not used to seeing brand new science. This is pretty atypical to have this kind of new science pop up in the mainstream.
Well, it's iterative refinement at the same time. You know, if you're in the technology sector, when you talk about a mature software product and you're refining the product over time, you're seeing the same kind of thing. And I think that's part of why it's fascinating, is because I can see it both in professional life, and then I feel like the social sciences are a bit more unique in the standpoint, or from the standpoint that everything is relatively new when you talk about sociology, psychology, and we've seen this kind of refinement over the past 25, 30 years. And so anybody who has a focus in the science side of the behavioral sciences has seen this kind of iterative data where we've understood better different concepts and narrowed them down and refined them, whereas stuff like math and chemistry and biology and things that we take relatively for granted at this point as being mature disciplines typically have not provided the same type of fast-paced change. And so people tend to think of, chemistry, biology, etc. When they think of the scientific method, they don't tend to think of immunology, virology, the behavioral sciences, newer disciplines, or disciplines where what you're studying is that complex and that quickly capable of changing, that it's just an abstract concept to the vast majority of people.
It is. It really is. I mean, the closest thing I can think of this is like a brontosaurus. I remember being in grade school and brontosaurus was a dinosaur, and in the 90s, I guess by the time I made it to high school, brontosaurus was not a dinosaur, and now it's a dinosaur. So,
I remember that.
Just because that's just a much slower progression.
Well, it's funny that you mention it, like that pterodactyl was a dinosaur growing up, and now it's classified as a pteranodon, and pteranodons are not dinosaurs.
Yeah. Oh,
I wouldn't even know that if it wasn't for Jacob's fascination with dinosaurs.
Exactly. Well, I think. I just remember I had a little book, like a kid's book with the brontosaurus in it, and I remember somebody saying, "Hey, you should get rid of that because it's got brontosaurus. It's not a dinosaur anymore." And then when it became a dinosaur around the time my kids were young, or I don't know, by the time my kids were looking at dinosaur books, it became relevant again. I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex in that book was like in the incorrect position. It was a more upright position, so that's wrong. But Brontosaurus is okay.
I found it interesting when I went out to Colorado. I think it was this last time. It may have been the time before. I did not realize that the Stegosaurus was found there at Dinosaur Ridge, and so one of I remember the Stegosaurus that I grew up understanding was very symmetrical, I guess, as far as weight-bearing load and the way it looked. And now it's a bit taller and kind of forward more. It's tough to describe.
Much bigger hips.
Yeah, it's a very different shape than what I grew up with, illustrations of in books. But I didn't realize it until I was at Dinosaur Ridge, and the only reason I was there was because I thought it would be a great little anecdote for Jacob when I got back home.
Mm-hmm. See, you might have known this if you would recognize The Lost World as a Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah,
actually, I don't remember. Actually, don't remember if Stegosaurus is in that movie. It was just too good of a joke.
Yeah, I refuse to acknowledge it.
I understand. I don't dislike it, but I do understand that it's.
I have not watched the newest Jurassic World either.
I didn't finish it. I went and saw it on a date, and I left.
That tells me everything I need to know about it.
Yeah, and I liked Lost World. I don't necessarily like it as a Jurassic Park movie, but I just like it as a movie with dinosaurs in it.
So I think I might be okay with Lost World if I hadn't read the book. That was the biggest thing that was a problem, because the first one and the book, they can exist in the same universe very well. They do very well together. The Lost World and the book The Lost World do not exist in the same universe in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
That's totally fair. Did you read any of the Harry Potter books?
I did. I actually read all of them, but I didn't read them until after I had watched the series.
I finished the fourth book and then watched the fourth movie that night, and consequently, I hate that movie. Like, I think it is one of the worst book adaptations in mankind.
So here's the funny thing. I read the Twilight books, and I actually thought the books were okay. I didn't think they were great. I didn't think they were scholarly literature or anything that anybody should necessarily read, but I thought they were at least an enjoyable, entertaining read. And I can't watch the movies.
That bad?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that bad or if it's just that the acting is that bad, that the story is maimed in such a way. I don't know. Like I really am not entirely sure. I couldn't finish the first one enough to draw a good conclusion.
So, how do you feel about the Lord of the Rings adaptation?
I'm okay with most of it. My biggest complaint is the way that Aragorn's story arc with the reforging of the sword was handled. Like I'm actually okay with the rest of it. I'm not okay with the way the sword was handled. And it's strange to point to that one particular thing, but I think it's because in the books, you really got a sense of when the sword was reforged, it became a character in and of itself, as much as as much as Aragorn wielding the sword. And in the movies, you didn't get that same sense of reverence for the sword. Sorry, I keep trying to move away to clear my throat just enough because I know it's that odd gravelly kind of sound. And I realized with this setup, I don't have any effective way of muting the mic when I do.
Yeah, I think about. I was trying to quickly look if there's a mute button in Audio Hijack, but I couldn't find one.
Yeah, I looked around for one. I even looked around for a way to like drag and drop a mute component so that maybe I could do that, but no. And so I'm trying to at least move myself away and over enough that, all right, I can clear my throat and I can be good. But I'm sure it's still being picked up. It's the reason I also plan to record, 5 seconds of just ambient noise audio to be able to drop over anything like that I need to edit out.
Nice. That's clever. I was going to say...
I would like to take credit for it, but I read that somewhere.
So you got to edit that out as well.
Oh, of course.
I'm looking at our show notes, and I don't see anything about the pandemic or well, there's some things about parenting during the pandemic. I don't see anything about the Lord of the Rings in our entertainment list.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly add it. I've noticed that the scratch notes, like regular general just list of topics that we could cover, doesn't age overly well either. Because it kind of feels strange to talk about, hey, we won the Premier League, but that has been some time ago now.
Well, you haven't started a new season yet, so it's still...
No, but it still feels strange because you guys just beat us in the Community Shield.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything about that, but
well, I mean, we looked pretty pathetic for part of that, so...
I mean... It's certainly not the team that won the Premier League.
Well, ever since the reinstatement of the games, they haven't looked like the team that won the Premier League. And there was one match against Crystal Palace that looked, reminiscent of the previous season. The rest of them looked like it was just, all right, we're here, we'll play.
Yeah, well.
And I get it. I mean, when you've already won, it's kind of difficult to judge how you approach it, right?
Yeah. Senioritis.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Community Shield, it's like, well, you got a cup. You got a league cup. So not getting the community shield's not that big of a deal.
Well, and at least it was lost on penalties. It wasn't like it was lost, prior to the penalty shootout.
Right.
But still, I would have liked to have seen us win that one going into the season, because it would give me more confidence in what we're going to do. Like at the moment, I'm kind of concerned about how lethargic the first few games are going to seem.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I'm taking it there's still going to be no fans in the stadiums. Is that right?
That's my understanding for now. I did see that Liverpool, Peter Moore was the CEO over the past 3 or 4 years. I don't remember exactly how long, but his contract was not renewed, and I don't know if it was the CFO, COO, I don't know, somebody that was a step below him is the new CEO, and he did release a statement saying that getting fans back into the stadium is, of course, a priority, but it has to be done safely, blah, blah, blah. Kind of the typical statement you would expect. I kind of think they're looking at limited capacity stadium returns in October, but I don't know. I feel like it's still a moving target at this point. I don't think they have any concrete plans, but I think they're trying to at least say, you know what, we've seen in a couple of other places, if you fill every, fourth seat or fifth seat, whatever the math works out to, then it can be relatively safe. I don't know. We'll see.
It's one of those things where it's like, if you're in a I would suppose that, like, if you filled every seat and everyone wore a mask the entire time and wore that mask properly, it'd probably be low risk. But man,
well, it goes back to there's just so many unknowns, right?
Yeah.
Like at this point, I feel like going outside, I'm fine regardless of what activity I choose to engage in. But at the same time, I only feel that way at the moment because I'm engaging in activities that at least allow me to maintain some distance from people who I think are ridiculously ignorant. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. For example, this past weekend we went to Tannehill just to get Jacob out of the house and have a change of scenery. We saw one other group of people that were 20 yards away the entire time we were walking around. It's not like we got close to anybody to be concerned about anything. And since we were outside, we weren't really concerned about it to begin with, but it was an activity that lent itself to not having to be close to people. Whereas sitting in a stadium, I'm not so sure I would feel comfortable sitting next to somebody even if masks were enforced. Like I feel like having at least a little bit of distance, even if it's a false sense of security, provides some level of I don't know, maybe it is completely false, but it's at least a feeling of, okay, it's not an imminent threat. Whereas I still, to this day, when I have to run over to Target or Publix or whatever, and I see people wearing a mask that's draped around their chin, it's like, come on, you're not doing anything. Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah. Yes. I actually bought a mask that should be the company that manufactured is trying or have submitted a certification to get it such that it would be a more effective mask than the N95 mask. Again, hasn't been certified. But I got it because it gives me a little peace of mind for just that scenario. Like, I feel like outside, like I took Luke and Jude to the zoo, and they require wearing a mask the entire time, and that's not entirely fun. And so, but we did it, and most of the people that were there were doing it. But I was just thinking, like, the whole time, I was like when we're walking around outside, and there's like nobody within like 20 feet of us, it's like I really felt like it was fine for us to not be wearing a mask. And just because it's like I'm not anywhere near anyone where they could get any droplets anywhere close to them. And, if one of my children sneezed, it would be in the air, and then just the heat, UV rays, relative humidity, all of that's going to prevent, or what we know, keeps the virus from being viable for any significant amount of time. But it's like going into a building where people aren't wearing a mask. It's like you're in an enclosed space, there's circulation, I don't know what sort of filtration the air conditioning system has. That's what concerns me more than most things. And there's been evidence that that should be a concern.
Yeah, I've noticed that most of when I have problems, or not problems, most of when it is foremost on my mind is like standing in the checkout register lines, and I feel the air from the AC, because I know that means I'm in the direct path of the ventilation system. And that tends to be when I think, okay, I really don't want to be here at the moment. Whereas the rest of the time, when I don't feel that, or when it's not as direct okay, I can tell this is blowing directly on me at this point, I'm not as concerned. Maybe I should be. I don't know. But at the same time, there's so much unknown about how it affects the body. I know I mentioned it. My sister tested positive, and then my nephew did as well, her son. My nephew had pretty much no symptoms whatsoever. My sister felt like she had the flu, I guess, for 2-3 days. Like it was not a long-standing type of, I really, feel like I have a problem. But then at the same time, out in Westminster, his wife is a nurse. I don't remember what floor, like what type of nurse, but she contracted it early on, and generally speaking has no other underlying effects. And like, it was a couple of weeks before she could even just walk down the stairs without being out of breath. And then of course, obviously with your father, I don't know, history of medical issues or non-issues, but from what I gather, there wasn't really any reason to think that he had any specific underlying risk. And yet,
I mean, he.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say he did have he had type 2 diabetes that he managed really well. So I think that underlying risk was probably the problem. But I mean, he was otherwise fine before he got it, and then like the last few weeks of his life, he was struggling to breathe the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that, like, if you look at the general demographics of each of those subsets, there's nothing to really explain it. Like, my sister has hypertension and issues with cholesterol, and both of those are significant risk factors, or so we've thought. And yet, she had, I wouldn't say minimal effects as far as what she felt. I mean, she definitely felt sick and definitely had issues with being able to get up and move around and breathe, etc., but not to the point where she had to seek external care. Like, she was able to just rest at home and be okay. And then you've got who, my understanding is she had no underlying conditions whatsoever, and then was very severely impacted, even though she didn't have to seek hospital care, but like multiple weeks of dealing with the ramifications of what the virus did for her ability to breathe, just moving around. And I think that's the part that makes it so difficult for me to make a judgment call,
Yeah. I think for me it has been I don't want to get the virus, and a lot of it isn't the actual the disease itself. I've never gotten so sick that ever thought I was gonna be, uh, have to go to the hospital or at death's door or something like that. So like I'm not so concerned about the actual disease running its course. It's the aftermath. The aftermath is so varied and can be so severe. The what will probably be called post COVID-19 syndrome scares me more than the actual sickness itself. And it ranges. Some people have no issues, but some things. Anecdotally, I've read about how like a man in his late 20s was more than likely going to need a double lung transplant, just because the disease ravaged his lungs. And another one, much like wife, a woman in her early 30s was winded going up a flight of stairs. She just she'd have to stop and rest before she can make it up the entire flight of stairs. My sister has recovered and is doing well, but she's got a persistent cough. I know she's tired, but I don't know to what effect the recovery is. But it's definitely more. She's got more problems going upstairs than before, and that's kind of like if it's if you're young and that affects you for the rest of your life, that's really scary, especially like if you want to be an active person. So the post recovery issues kind of frighten me more than the disease itself.
Yeah, I completely understand, because I'm on the same general kind of thought process. Like the way I've described it to other people, my parents included, even for whatever good that does. My concern is that we know for sure there is neurological damage. We know for sure there is cardiovascular system damage, and we know for sure there is respiratory system damage. I don't want to live with damage to any of those three systems for the rest of my life.
There's also renal damage, because it also has a similar delicate tissue. So I know that when my father was sick, that he had renal damage and he had to go on dialysis because it was shredding his kidneys. And the nephrologist stated, based on what she saw, it's acute damage and it will recover. But in my mind, I was like, if I got to give my dad a kidney, I'll give my dad a kidney.
Yeah. Well, it kind of, from what little bit we seemingly have confirmed.
Yeah.
The part that scares me most is that they've talked about the relatively commonplace persistence of blood clots that were temporary that caused damage, right? So my mom is a good comparison here, because she has an autoimmune disease that is similar to lupus, but it's not classified as lupus. And the issue, of course, is random blood clots. And this was found, I don't know, probably 20 years ago now. But just seeing the ramifications of what dealing with that does to the body, and the multiple kind of, not really side effects, but subsidiary effects from blood clots from something that is not so pervasive, really has me concerned about what that means if you are infected or become symptomatic with hundreds or thousands of microclots, however you want to describe it. Like that sounds like at this point my life is suddenly 20% of the capacity it would be for the rest of my life. Yeah. That's the part that's concerning, especially when you have something like, I've taken this opportunity to become more fit, and so I'm finally on a very positive trajectory as far as my health and fitness, etc. I certainly wouldn't want to have 6 months of that and then, oh well, you're screwed for 20 years.
Yeah, that would be tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole pandemic is already tragic because everybody. I think before this is over, every person is going to have a single degree, if not their own selves, a single degree of knowing somebody who is tragically affected by this pandemic. So, yeah, I I have not. I've gone the other way with the pandemic. Actually, interesting thing. About a week and a half ago, I stopped drinking diet drinks on a daily basis, and I've lost weight because of that. And it reminds me of a study I once read where even though diet drinks don't have any calories, there is a response from the pancreas or a pancreatic insulin response. And so I dropped 5 pounds in a week and a half from not drinking diet drinks.
Interesting. I would not have expected that.
I didn't expect that, and I can remember 2 years ago when doing updates for Mass, the group of us that were doing those updates, we were home for 3 weeks doing those updates in the off hours.
Yeah, and when it was going to the new Federation scheme.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I think it was the 4282 version update. Is that when they also implemented the Federation scheme change?
Well, I think that's when they added Richmond. It may have been that.
No, it was right before that.
Okay, so 4282 was done, and then Richmond was done.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't a part of the Richmond updates. Anyway, before that, I was just drinking soft drinks, like 1 or 2 a day because they're there. And during that 3 weeks because it was like 2 weeks of updates and then the week of Thanksgiving. So I was out, I was away from the office for 3 weeks. And I lost 20 pounds. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. So I came back and only drank diet drinks for the most part. Would drink a regular drink every once in a while. And, that was fine. But being at home and not being active on a daily basis, I think I'm more active now than I was before the pandemic started, but I'm not getting it in on a daily basis. So overall, I've had a net loss of fitness and but not drinking even diet drinks. I will on occasion, maybe once a week, I will have a full-on sugared soft drink. And that seems to be better than drinking diet drinks because I'm getting what I want, but I'm just not getting it that often. So it was an interesting response.
I find this fascinating because I am now going on. I have completed 5 months of every single day burning whatever my move goal as far as active calories are. It started at 800. I've bumped it up to 900 a month ago, I think. But either way, like the point being that it's now been 5 months where every single day, even if it's just walking or whatever gets me up to that calorie goal is, that I've make sure that I've hit it without question, no fail. And I've been tracking what I've been eating just to have visibility. Like I've tried not to necessarily change what I want to eat and what I consume, though I did make some adjustments the first 3 months because I approached it in a multi-phase process, and we can kind of talk about that if need be.
Yeah.
But the idea was I don't want to change what I consume because life is too short. I would rather enjoy what I consume. But I want to understand what effect it has on me so that I know what I need to do to change or modify or affect that effect. And so since March, and I'm kind of liberal with my assessment, I take my peak weight that I ever hit within the past 6 months to a year of that March, not necessarily where I was at the beginning of March, But even if you take where I was at the beginning of March as a measurement and have that be the baseline, I've still lost 45 plus pounds and 7% ish, 8% ish body fat. Like
That's awesome.
I am back to where my physique was post graduation from high school, and that feels unreal to me.
That is awesome.
So, like for example, this morning I weighed in at 155 pounds, and that's just ridiculously strange.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I weighed 155 pounds.
And for a while there, I thought, it's going to look strange. I'm going to look like I'm malnourished, that kind of thing.
No.
When I actually take the time to pause and look, yeah, okay, I look thin compared to where I was. But if you don't compare me to where I was, I look normal.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in a long time I have looked, quote unquote, normal. And I've just been ecstatic. Like it's been...
That's awesome.
It's been great, especially since I had like an entire cheesecake the week of my birthday and still didn't. You know, it's not like I've stopped enjoying the things I wanted to enjoy. It's just that we've made tweaks to make those things that I want to enjoy a little bit better. So, like the cheesecake, Emily found a keto-friendly kind of recipe and used that as a baseline, and then added like some sugar and some whole fat cream cheese and that kind of thing. And so overall, sugar content and everything was probably halved from a normal cheesecake, but it tasted exactly like a normal cheesecake.
See, if it tastes exactly like it, then, yeah, go for it. I was going to say, like, Becca will tell me, she's like, if you drink diet drinks long enough, you'll get used to it. And I was like, no, I don't get used to the flavor of a diet drink. I can always tell the difference. I can tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi. I can tell the difference between Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi. I can tell the difference between Diet Coke, Coke Zero, and Coca-Cola Classic. So, I mean, I know what they all taste like. And, with just the smallest of sips. And so it's just like, I would rather modify my diet just a little bit so that I can have the thing that I want, but not have it as often. And I think that tends to be more effective. I know that I loved lifting weights because it definitely curbed my appetite. But then whenever I would eat, I'd eat a fair amount, and I still would be, having a net gain in the way my body looked and felt. And so it was just got to the, I love when it would get to the point where you lifted weights so you could eat more, and then you'd eat more so you could lift more, and then you'd lift more so you could eat more, and you just got into this really nice positive feedback. And but I haven't been doing that for the past 6 months because I refuse to go to the gym and work out. I mean, but the thing is, I've come up with a workout for myself.
Because the entire reason my sister became infected was because she's been going to a kickboxing gym. Like, that was literally her only extracurricular activity where she could be infected, and had to have occurred there.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I think I'll throw out this number because it's the only number I know, but when Sweden ended their quote-unquote experiment, they did a test and reasonably said that the 5 to 7% of their population had been exposed. And so that would deem their experiment a failure because they aren't going to get herd immunity from that small of a number. And I've got to imagine that that number is probably not far off from where we live. I imagine that small of a number of people have contracted the illness, but it's just because the incubation time is so long, you never know who it is. And so for all the aforementioned reasons, I can't go to the gym. I can't be inside with people who for any extended period of time that I don't have to. If there was an outdoor gym, I'd be a lot more interested in doing that. Like, I've been going to my gym's pool. We have an outdoor pool, and I have no qualms about doing that. Like, I feel like it's a relatively low risk activity because it's easy to well, one, the number of people that are going to the pool is really low. The number of people there, it's a much lower volume, and just being outside, it just seems like a risk that is not unreasonable. So yeah, I did come up with a workout for myself, and I could be doing it every day in my garage, no problem. I just lack the willpower at the moment. But that's always the case.
I completely understand. Like, I can't tell you how many days I have gotten up and it's like, I want to take a break. I just need a day. The problem is that I know my mentality takes that day and suddenly it becomes a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and
Yep.
then it's just all gone.
Yeah.
So when I started this journey, I decided, all right, on the day that I need a break, I'm just going to make laps around the neighborhood. I'm just going to walk. And I can, still be on meetings. I can still do different things that are part of the job. No big deal. Over the past 3 weeks, because I've reached a level where I feel better as far as entire just general fitness level, like over the past 3 weeks, it's been nothing but high intensity interval training with beach body workouts, and then using the rowing machine. And I've been able to do nothing but those two things for the most part daily and keep it under an hour and a half. That's my big goal. Because I don't want to get to the point where I'm working out for, 2, 3, 4 hours out of the day.
Yeah.
I think it's just, at that point, it's miserable. And so what I found was if I use the Beachbody workouts, there's a particular program that's called Cortiforce that was MMA inspired, we'll say, that reminded me of how well certain martial arts moves can lend themselves to fitness in general. Like, a long time ago, I was a practitioner of Taekwondo for years, and then I did go to a boxing gym and learn general boxing conditioning and fitness for, it was a 6-week program. And a lot of the program that I've been following reminds me of what we were doing in that boxing gym, but in a compressed time frame. Because with the 6 weeks with the boxing gym, it was about 2 hours a night every single day, and that just really got to the point where it was like, all right, I don't know if I can keep going. Whereas the Beachbody program is, I think the longest workout's an hour. And so at that point, I typically might have 20 minutes that I still need to jump on the rower just to fill out my move goal for the day. But I can handle that because that's 20 minutes I can work in anytime during the day. It's not, all right, I have to do this workout and then go to this, and I have to have it all on this one particular time frame. And so it's lent itself well to the idea of working from home, because then, all right, my lunch break, I can do this HIIT workout, and then, after I quote-unquote end for the day, I can do 20, 30 minutes on the rower just to finish out whatever I need to get from a move perspective, and then I can go pick up Jacob from daycare.
That seems like a really good, like the way you've worked it in, like lends itself to be something that you can accomplish every day. Because like I know, like when you can get on a schedule, like that makes a huge difference. And I know on the days where I don't want to do this, and then I don't do it, I was like, then later that day when I can't do it, I'll be like, man, I wish I'd done that. But every time I jumped in and did my workout, I never once did I ever think, oh man, I wish I didn't work out today. You always, I've always been glad that I did the workout. So it's really cool that you've been able to work that in and fit it in to work. it goes to show like how much driving kind of messes up your day.
Well, and it also illustrates very well how much it's purely a mental game when it comes to getting the workout in. Like when I first started, my whole point was, all right, up until the end of the year, regardless of whether I'm seeing progress, regardless of anything else, I'm going to get the workout in. I don't know exactly when, and I don't care when. It's just I'm going to get it in. Whether I want to or not, I'm going to do it. And that mentality is what fueled getting to the point where it's, all right, I really don't want to do this workout, but it's only 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Uh, Let me get it done at lunch, and I'll have a shake for lunch instead of, fixing something more complex. And it's led to significant results. And so now the results are one of those things that are, okay, even though I don't want to do it, like I firsthand see significant gains as far as the results go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to not do it. So it's it's become a self-fulfilling kind of activity at this point. Whereas starting out the first 3-4 weeks, those were the most difficult because I would see positive trends sometimes, and I would see negative trends sometimes. And if I hadn't put, this kind of finite, I'm going to go to December 31st, regardless of what I see at the end of it, I would have stopped 3-4 times before I even got through those first 3-4 weeks.
That's really good. That was a really good way to change your mindset because, like you said, it is all psychological. I mean, our bodies can do far more than our minds let ourselves do. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. At this point, I think I like pause and kind of coast through workouts just because it's purely mental, that it feels like I can't keep going. And then, 3-4 minutes later, it's like I get a second wind or a third wind or whatever. Well, that's purely mental. It's not like I've had a chance to actually take a break. So I know it's there, but I still haven't been able to get past that hurdle yet either.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with the hurdle. But I remember seeing somebody say, I think this was like maybe like a month or two into this pandemic, and somebody put out there that it's like, if you didn't get that project done, you feel like you haven't. You felt like you haven't used your quote unquote extra time wisely. Don't forget, there's a pandemic. That's stressful. Like, this is like one of the largest stressors we'll probably go through in life, at least collectively. So give yourself some time, and you've got tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah, the impetus for even starting this was more a matter of, I knew if I was going to be at home that much and surrounded by the same things that I see day to day that much more, I just needed something that would allow me to feel like I was exerting that anxiety into an activity, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so why not turn it into just purely a physical activity for the sake of exercise? Mm-hmm. Something that would be enjoyable, or enjoyable enough that I would continue to do it. But like the whole point was, I know that physical exercise releases these particular chemicals that are going to help me cope with the day-to-day stress of, I only see the same, 2,500 square feet every single day. And if it hadn't been for that as the impetus of, this is going to make me be able to manage day-to-day better, I probably still wouldn't have been able to get beyond the mental hurdle of, yeah, I need to do this anyway.
Yeah, that's a really well thought out way to approach it, especially because once you got the momentum going, it was easy to keep it going. And I'll say, like, even though my I guess I would say I've had a net loss in physical activity. I've done more hiking and paddling this year than I've done in the previous years, especially paddling. I've done more paddling this summer than I've done like in the past 5 years when I started paddling, and it's been a lot of fun. And as a side note, the outdoor sports gray market has been insane. I'll come back around to that. But like I've been on a river or on the water in a kayak more weekends this summer than I've not. And a lot of it has been that my kids are old enough to paddle a boat on their own, and I finally come across some two really nice kids boats. They weren't terribly expensive, but they're they've got a better hull design than sort of the flat saucer type kayaks that you could pick up at Walmart. But I actually got a 12-foot boat for Luke at the beginning of the summer, and I saw him paddling that thing, and that boy, he's tall, but he's 9 years old, so he's trying to paddle a boat that was made for an adult, and he would struggle. He could do it, but he would struggle, and I just felt so bad. So I couldn't let myself rest, and so I finally came across this boat that's manufactured in South Africa, designed and manufactured in South Africa. And there's a dealer on the West Coast that got them in, and he was, to my surprise, he had some available. He didn't have the exact colors we wanted, but we got two boats, and now Luke and Jude have these really good kids boats, and they'll probably be good for them and for Luke for the next, I'm hoping 2 to 3 years. So by the time he's 12, he might need to go up in size. But Jude's got a good 5 years in his boat. Anyway, the original boat that I got was a 12-foot boat. It was probably 60 pounds, which in the water is not a big deal. It was such a pain to put on the top of my truck and take to the water, but in the water it was fine. But it was, I think, 34 inches wide, and that was just so difficult for him. Like every time he's like having to move his paddle around the width of this boat. And the boat that he has now, I think, is 26 inches wide and weighs 28 pounds. So it's a much bigger difference. And if he can paddle evenly, then it tracks really, really well. But that boat that I bought it brand new, and its MSRP was $700, and I got it for $600 because it might be last year's model. Anyway, the guy I boats new from, he was selling it for $600, so $600 plus tax. I took it out on one river, so it got some scuffs, and took it out. That went on the river one time, and then into a big body of water at Oak Mountain, maybe half a dozen times, maybe more. But paddling big water like that, there's no scrapes on it. So I had it for 2 months, and I put it on Facebook Marketplace for $700 just to see, hey, maybe somebody will buy it for $700. And within 24 hours, I had $700 cash in my hand from selling that boat, because you cannot find a used kayak anymore. You can hardly find a new kayak anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the same goes for bicycles. People cannot keep bicycles are not staying. I was looking at with the fact I have a bike that's about 12 years old, and I thought maybe I should sell it now and upgrade my bike and buy it new, because the bike resellers are not like gouging people. They're selling it at MSRP. And I went to Redemptum Cycles website, and they have on their website, call us for current stock. Call us or email us for current stock, because it's just not worth keeping up with on their website.
I guess that doesn't surprise me too much, just based on... Are you in the ECH chat for... the like large everybody in ECH chat?
I if I am, I am not following it, or I have it muted.
Yeah, I don't look at it very often, but I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of people post about buying kayaks and bikes and things in general to be outside because it's one of the places that people feel safer. And so I've seen a lot of people pick up those things as hobbies that they typically hadn't been doing prior. And like I've even thought about it, with as much time as I've spent on a rowing machine, it'd be kind of nice to be on the water getting the same kind of feedback and fitness instead of having to just sit and stare at a digital readout. But at the same time, I realized that the likelihood of me going to a body of water on a daily basis is ridiculously low compared to, at least getting the fitness benefits of using a rowing machine in the house. So I've thought about it, and I would like to, find my way into at least once every so often getting out on the water instead of just doing it on a machine. But I wonder how much of it is also people who have been using like ellipticals or stationary bikes or whatever the case may be, deciding, what, at least this way I can get some exercise outside and I'm doing an activity that's not just staring at a display.
Yeah, well, I've got an extra boat right now, so we can make that happen. I'd be happy to meet you on a body of water, um, on a weekend day. That'd be cool, or even a weekday. Um, but my friend, he is probably the person I know that's most dedicated to getting out on a body of water on a regular basis for training. He, especially last year, he trained to paddle the Chattajack. I don't know what I don't know if there's a number that follows that, but it's the annual race held in Chattanooga on the Tennessee River. I think it's every October or so. And last year he was training for that, and I want to say he was at Oak Mountain 3 days a week, maybe 3 to 4 days a week, but like at least 2 of those days were on a weekday after work. And even in the winter, he was out on the water. He had a dry suit so that he could, if he got wet, or he had actually had a combination of either using a dry suit, or he had 2 different thickness wetsuits, just depending on how cold the air and water temperatures were.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's a lot of commitment to being out on the water, and it's still like there was no way that he would be able to get out on the water every day, not without sacrificing, home life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got my scuba certification, and I remember the advanced open water class. We did our certification dives at I don't remember the name of the springs. It's in Pelham. It's an open water.
I'm familiar with it. I've seen it.
Yeah. Either way, like the water there was cold enough that I remember when I did my certification dives, I swore I would never again do any dives or anything in not necessarily even cold water, just colder water without a dry suit. And I just, period, not going to happen. I was in a 3mm wetsuit with a 0.5mm, it wasn't a full wetsuit, it was just the chest vest component. And I was shivering the entire time. And we had to do 3 dives over 2 days. We had to do a deep water dive, a dive that was low visibility, like you were doing a rescue style dive, and I think the third was actually just general dive, like just to hit 60 feet. But it was miserable. Like over 2 days, I spent a good 1.5 days just trying to get warm. And
Wow.
so I just refuse. Like, I don't care how gorgeous the water is or anything else. If I don't have a dry suit and I can't stay warm, I don't care.
Well, that particular venue is it's a filled-in quarry, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going to be. I mean, I assume that just is going to be by nature much colder than diving out in a equatorial shallow sea. So because there's no current, there's nothing to warm. I mean, just the surface is warmed by the sun, and that's it. So it gets really cold really fast, even in moving water. So I
Yeah, it as soon as you dropped below, I think it was about 15 feet, it dropped to about 70 degrees.
Oh, that's so cold.
Yeah, it was bad. Like I remember my original open water certification dives were down in Pompano Beach, and it got so warm in the water that we actually stripped wetsuits and everything else. It was just the gear on top of shorts.
Yeah.
And that was so much more my style.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Actually, I was thinking. It was actually either this week or last week. I was thinking about your scuba certification, and I wondered, it's like the times I've gone down to about 15 feet deep, just from like swimming. My like, I can't stay down there for an extended period of time because my ears, uh, just are uncomfortable. Like as a diver, like when you're going down 60 feet, what are you doing for regulating your ear pressure? Is there a technique or a thing that you do?
There is. So it kind of depends on the person. Everybody finds a technique that works better for them. But equalization is a big deal once you drop below 10 feet. And so there were a lot of people that I would dive with that would sit at 12 to 15 feet for 10, 15 minutes before they could finally get their ears, the pressure in their ears to equalize and be able to go any further. Typically, though, if you hold your nose and then pretend like you're blowing your nose, where
Mm-hmm.
you're forcing the air kind of out or toward the ears a little bit, that is what worked best for me. And even then, depending on the water temperature and everything else, like I could have moments where I was still doing that for 10 minutes before I could finally get to a comfortable pressure. But then once you're able to equalize, you can typically go pretty much as deep as you want. Like it's just that initial threshold that's a big issue. And then after that, once you're comfortable, I guess is a good way to put it, you tend to be able to go deeper without a problem. And then as long as you're coming up slow enough that you're not, risking the bends or a number of other unpleasantries, then you're probably fine on the ascent. But at the descent level, it's somewhere between 10 and 20 feet. Most people have to pause, get to that point of equalization, and then you can typically drop as deep as you want at that point.
Yeah, I was wondering. It's like I couldn't imagine that as many people that dive for as long as people can dive with a tank of air, that you don't find some comfort, because like when it is uncomfortable, it's fairly uncomfortable, and I just couldn't. I can't see myself fully enjoying the experience of being that deep underwater with my ears being that sore or that uncomfortable. So
And
um,
we even had people that would eventually just call off a dive because at that point they just still couldn't equalize. It's like, all right, it's just not my day, you know. And we've also had the extreme side where you had people who would just suffer through it and then come up and have damage to the eardrum because they didn't take the time to equalize.
ooh,
So it's definitely important, if you're going to pursue that type of activity, make sure that at the somewhere between 10 and 20 feet, you just pause and you wait. And sorry, either it's your day or it's not. And most of the time, within a few minutes, you can kind of get to a point where, okay, this feels comfortable. Let me drop another couple of feet and just see how it feels. And then most people are able at that point to have their ears, quote unquote, pop and then just descend like normal.
yeah. Well, that I can't even remember why I was thinking about that, but it wasn't for scuba diving. It was for being underwater, but I don't remember what it was I was thinking, but I just remember thinking, I was like, oh, I want to ask you that question. If there's a point where you can just kind of hang out and fix it.
It makes a huge difference when you have a tank as well, because you're not, pressured into, oh, I have to breathe, so I have to get back up to the surface and then come back down. What I found more often than not is as long as I could spend a minute at 15 feet, then at some point over the course of that minute, the pressure would relieve itself. And then at that point, I was okay. Now, sometimes it would take a little bit longer, but the biggest thing was being able to have that time to just sit, below the surface and breathe. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to say I think the longest I can hold my breath right now is pretty. I mean, it might be longer than if you just pick a random person out on the street. It's probably longer than them, but it's definitely not anywhere near the record of the underwater pearl divers. I want to say I can't remember if they can be underwater for 5 minutes or 15 minutes. It's something. Both of those times seem abnormally long to be underwater, but because they've conditioned themselves for it. But it's one of those numbers.
Oh, it's closer to the 15 mark, and the only reason I know that is because I recently listened to Breathe, the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess it's technically Breath, Breath. The author is James Nestor, and he wrote a book on freedivers prior to writing Breath. And Breath just explores the ramifications of breathing on, day-to-day, etc. But the book on freediving was what influenced his research into breathing in general. And he specifically called out, I think it was 18 minutes in one of them.
Wow.
Either way, it was ridiculously absurd. I know it was over 15 minutes.
Okay. I knew it was an increment of 5 where it's like 5 minutes seems like a long time, 15 minutes seems like a long time, but I know it was one of those numbers. And either way, even if it was 5 minutes, that's still a long time to be underwater when most people, I think, can most people stay underwater for more than a minute?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I could tell you the distance. I know that I can swim 25 meters underwater in a single breath. And when I do that, it's like if I were to, I could probably get in a pool and do that today. And by the time I get to the end of that 25 meters, my vision starts to, it's a black creeps in on both sides of my eye, like my vision, sort of like a vignette. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm blacking out. And so, it's kind of an interesting experience. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's
what
it does. Go ahead.
At what depth is that?
Oh, it's a lap pool, so I think the deepest part is like 5 feet, 5.5 feet. So, and I'm probably 2 feet deep because I just want to keep ample space between me and the surface so that I don't quickly, accidentally come up for air when I do that. But it's in a lap pool.
Yeah, and so extrapolate that to, we're talking about 10, 15 minutes, but we're talking about it at depths in excess of 20 feet.
Oh yeah, even they dive fairly deep.
Well, I think the record for a free dive is over 100 feet.
That's wild.
Especially considering, from a scuba perspective, the kind of the demarcation point of where you have to worry about pausing on the way up and making sure that you're not ascending too quick. Like as soon as you cross that 15-foot threshold, the rules change. Mm-hmm. So if you're 15 feet or above, it's like, all right, yeah, do whatever. You should probably not ascend too fast, but big deal.
You're not going to kill
soon,
yourself.
Yeah. As soon as you cross 15 feet, like you're supposed to have a safety stop at 15 feet that lasts for a computed amount of time based on how long you spent below 15 feet. And you're still supposed to ascend at that point after you've spent the requisite amount of time at 15 feet, just kind of equalizing body pressure or pressure in general. You're still supposed to ascend slowly above that 15 feet to ensure that you don't have issues with air bubbles or depending on what you're breathing, it could be nitrogen bubbles, etc. But if you think about a free diver, theoretically that means they should be able to descend to 100 feet relatively quickly, within the first 2-3 minutes. But then the rest of that time that is supposedly available to them should be a slow, steady ascent in order to avoid harm. Now, whether that's actually the case or not, I don't know. I've never actually read up on what that looks like, but it may very well be counterintuitive to what the science of scuba diving provides, and it may be based on the difference between breathing compressed air and having no air that you're breathing, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they spend a lot of time decompressing. And it may have all to do with breathing compressed air or not. And I know I've seen a video of a diver doing a free dive like that. And I'm going to see if I can find it. I'll send you the link. But I don't, and I didn't think about it at the time, but I don't recall him going up slowly. I recall him just diving down deep, like he's diving 10 feet down, but deeper and deeper and deeper, like going that fast and coming up that fast. So, but
I'm sure a large part of it has to do with the idea of breathing compressed air, because if you just take the science of, even though it's in the tank, when you breathe it in, there is whatever amount of pressure that is on your body that is applied to that air as well. And so if you're not breathing in additional air underwater, then it's just expanding to whatever point that it's going to expand or compress as you dive. You're not worried about it expanding larger than what you were able to consume at the surface because it's not in a compressed state.
Right. Well, I assume it decompresses some inside your lungs. I don't know. I've never breathed compressed air, so because
there's definitely a lot of science behind it, because like if you're staying above, I think it's 60 feet, 65 feet, then a blend of nitrogen and oxygen is better to prolong your time underwater. But if you start dropping below that 60, 65 foot mark, you don't want the nitrogen blend that you would get above that, because it can become toxic.
Interesting.
There was a whole separate certification on using nitric oxide as the gas in your tank versus just plain oxygen.
So is it compressed oxygen or is it compressed air in your tank on a standard dive?
So for the dives that I did, for most of my dives, it was just a mix of nitrogen and oxygen. They call it nitrox.
Okay.
Nitrox. But that's because most of my dives were above the quote-unquote deep level. The ones that went deep, it was, as far as I know, compressed air, not compressed oxygen. But I didn't have to fill the tanks, so I don't know 100%.
Right. That's interesting. One time, I was playing trivia, and one of the questions was, what is the third most abundant element in the air? And it's surprisingly argon.
It seems like I've heard that before.
I might have told you the next day.
Well, so it's interesting. I mentioned Breath by podcast, or one of the things that he talks about is that the original amoeba, microorganism, whatever, subsisted on carbon dioxide, right? And
Mm-hmm.
over time realized that it could create more energy on the same amount of oxygen than as it could carbon dioxide, which is how it would eventually mutate or adapt to absorb oxygen for energy instead of carbon dioxide and emit carbon dioxide. And so it's kind of fascinating to think of it being a efficiency mechanism for creating energy instead of just something that is a natural kind of building block, so to speak. Because we think of air, we think of oxygen as a naturally occurring item that we require for life. But it's far more intricate than that when you think about what oxygen provides from a chemical level, or atomic level rather, versus carbon dioxide, and how easy it is to absorb and attach to other molecules instead of having to break it down.
Yes. I just remember sitting there after realizing why we breathe oxygen, thinking, it's like, who knows this? It's like, especially like when, like, you're going to learn it you'll learn about it if you are looking for it or you happen across it in a physiology class. I don't think you really happen across that in any other situation in life, where that information. And I'm just like, we all know that we need oxygen, but I would guess that well over 90% of people just don't know why they need oxygen or what oxygen does. Like, I know where it sits, and I have a vague recollection of what that does. I mean, I haven't needed to know what the electron transport chain does since that that semester was over. So I don't even remember what it does. I know it creates energy, but I don't remember how much energy it creates, or where this mechanism, or where this process is even happening. But I do remember this is the sole purpose of us breathing oxygen. And so it's just like, what? I mean, it's like, I guess it's kind of like, it's like, man, computers are magic. You go and they do a thing, and it's like, I know how some of this stuff works on the under the covers, but it's just like, for a lot of people, it's just magic, and it works, and it does what they need it to do, and that's great, and I guess that's good. And I don't feel like I've benefited in life from knowing what oxygen does, but it's certainly something I've talked about way too much.
I think it's kind of funny, the correlation there. So going to the Epic versus Apple battle, my first exposure to it was listening to part of the ATP podcast where they mentioned it. And then I listened to part of the talk show where Gruber and Renee Ritchie were talking about it. And it changed my perspective significantly. And it was the little detail of thinking about it in the concept of business-to-business interaction instead of issues that I have with the specific application of rules with the entity itself. And what I mean by that is, Gruber and Renee were talking about, as an example, there was a company that there was a trademark dispute where the company that Apple targeted was using a pear-shaped logo.
And I remember that company.
Yeah, and Renee brought up a good point. The law is written where if you don't go after them and file against them and protect your trademark or your intellectual property, then you basically lose that trademark over time, And so if you abstract that a little bit and look at the Epic lawsuit, like the issue that I had with it was that Apple was targeting the entire developer agreement with Epic, which also targeted the Unreal Engine and its use elsewhere. But what exactly could you do if you're Apple if you don't actually enact the rules of the developer agreement, right? So the developer agreement between Apple and Epic would cover anything that Epic puts on the iOS App Store, in this case, Fortnite, and whatever they develop for the Mac in general, in this case, Unreal Engine. And so you could say, all right, just ban Fortnite. But that's not what the developer agreement says. From a legal perspective, it's no, you severed the developer agreement. And so taking a step back and looking at it through the lens of, from a business practice, even though it may seem overreaching or extreme in this case, to completely sever any and all developer relations, if you need to enforce that in the future, I can see it being a problem. The whole idea of precedent. And that changed my perspective of the battle in completely. Because I don't think anybody can make the case that Epic did the right thing with Fortnite as an entity. I think the case that everybody wants to make is that Epic is trying to make an argument on behalf of developers in general. But when you look at the actual actions of what they're doing, that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to get their app store as an app on Apple's App Store and Google's App Store. And they're attempting to leverage any loophole or legal battle they can to do so. Well, that changes the conversation.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through that episode of the talk show, a little over halfway, and I don't think they have made that point yet. And it does make it's a valid point. And one of the things they in the first half of that show, they do talk about how Apple got to be where it is because it's a ruthless company, just like Microsoft, just like I assume Epic would be one too. Sony, name any of those. Google, Facebook, definitely Facebook. But that is sort of how you have to do business. I think Apple's response to Epic is reasonable. I think that Apple's face value response to anyone who asks, saying that we treat all of developers equal, is I don't know if it's actually confirmed that it's not, or that we know pretty well that it is not, but we are all operating from the position that Apple does not treat all developers equal. We know Apple is a developer on the platform, and we know they don't treat themselves equally. I give them a buy for that because, they get to use private APIs for their applications. So that's not really the thing I really find distasteful about the whole thing, but the general non-competitive rules of the App Store is what I think needs to change. And Epic stepped into this. They were picking a fight. You can tell they were picking a fight because they had a legal response immediately after Fortnite was banned. So I ultimately hope good comes from it. I think that it's kind of sad that it has to be an unpleasant back and forth, but that's what it's going to take. But I think ultimately the rules of the App Store should be different. And I don't necessarily.
The more I've heard, the more I think that the missed opportunity is with Microsoft and the Xbox Live Pass, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. To me, that is really what should be more the story than the Epic Apple battle. Because to me, the Epic Apple battle is just, the more I've learned about it, Epic's in the wrong. They should just be gone. You know, whatever. They have no legal footing because of the way they handled the situation. Whereas the Microsoft story is more interesting because it's more a matter of this is a path that we see that we're going toward, and we have to find a way to be able to provide it, and that in and of itself should create change in the App Store and the rules and the structure if you were an objective outsider looking at it.
I think, I mean, if I had to guess, Epic's strategy is expose it and hope that the whatever court ruling is, it's like they won't win their case, but Apple will be Apple will be exposed as an or the Apple's App Store will be exposed as an anti-competitive marketplace, and there will be a separate suit filed against them for that. That seems like a relatively logical strategy, and in the end they could win that way, but I don't think that they're going to win their case for the reasons that you mentioned. But I agree. I didn't even realize that Microsoft, I knew about Google Stadium, but I didn't know that Google Stadium was something that Google attempted to get into the iOS App Store, and I didn't even know about Microsoft's attempt to do that until I listened to that episode of the podcast. And I do think that's a far more compelling reason to hopefully compel Apple to change their rules, if not have them forced to have their rules changed, because a streaming game system that's coming. The hardware is only, server-side hardware and better broadband is only going to make that more and more feasible until maybe that's the only way we play games. And so, because that's basically the way the majority of movies are watched. I can remember a time when movies needed to be in your disc player, and before that on tape, and because there was just no way to stream it. And so I see games going that direction as well. And there's really no difference between streaming games versus streaming video versus streaming music. It's just, you've got, you're controlling input. So we're sort of watching how the back and forth of, I was comparing the back and forth of science that we're watching with the pandemic, relating it to the back and forth between various large companies, and how this is a window into that. And so it was happening all the time before this. It's just, we don't see most of it. But
yeah, I do think it's interesting that I didn't hear anything about Microsoft's attempts at getting the Game Pass on the iPhone until I listened to the podcast. I don't know how much that is just my lack of exposure to specific news groups or cycles, and how much of it is that it really flew that far under the radar.
I think it stayed pretty much under the radar, and if you weren't in that loop, you weren't going to get it, because the Epic stories they're being a lot more flashy about it, and they're, I would expect that they're trying to work public opinion in their favor. I can't really tell I don't think they can expect to win this case, because it's very clearly what they've done is a violation of the agreement that they agreed to, which makes me think, well, then their end game is to increase scrutiny of the App Store.
So in the podcast, I'll give you a spoiler. Renee thinks that the end game is to provide some sort of impetus for EU and congressional oversight, since the beginning talks have already started.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just to provide that additional level of yeah, this is a problem, and hope for the best on whatever the rulings are from those organizations.
That's I think that's what their end game is as well. And I'm sure Renee said it much better. That man, like, he speaks and gems come out of his mouth. He's I really like Renee Ritchie.
It's interesting. I actually have not put any stock or faith in anything from iMore since he left.
What's iMore anymore?
It's almost entirely just what used to be Renee Ritchie and now no longer matters.
Yeah. I used to be such a fan. I really wish the Vector podcast hadn't gone away. I was such a fan of that show. I liked him and Guy English. Oh, that was Debug. I loved Debug, even though like everything they're talking about is sort of like I don't live in that world. I just really enjoyed listening to that. And there's some great podcasts with some old Apple people, the people that were at Apple during the launch of the iPhone or the development of the iPhone. And I feel like those podcasts are gold. Don Melton was one of my favorite ones to listen to.
Yeah, I probably haven't listened to 90+% of even the podcasts that I do subscribe to. I was doing pretty good for a bit there. So when I started the whole fitness journey as far as walking and doing some jogging and rowing, I was listening to podcasts, and then I thought, yeah, why don't I just buy an arm that I can attach to the rower and put the iPad in, and I can catch up on the backlog of TV shows that I've got. And so my listening to podcasts has been a very up and down, sometimes I'm good about it, sometimes I'm not, type of journey over the past few months.
Well, I'm making a run at all the talk show podcasts. I listened to 2 last week, and I think I've got this one with Renee, and I think there's one more that I'm hoping to get done this week.
There's 2 more now because another one dropped a day or 2 ago. It may have even been this morning. I happened to notice it. I think it was this morning that I noticed it. But there's 2 after the one with Renee.
I gotcha. So I've got 3. I'm 2.5 behind. I really like that podcast, and because he does his ad reads live, I listen to all the ad reads. But ATP, I always fast forward through the unless it's a new ad read, I'll listen to a new ad read. But all the previous ones, because they're pre-recorded, I fast forward through those. So if I want to participate in helping generate some ad revenue, I'll just go to their show notes page and use the whatever code that is relevant.
I find for me it depends a lot on what I'm doing while I'm listening. Like if I have a free hand, I'll typically skip the ads unless like if Gruber has Merlin Man on where there's some interaction with the ads. I don't want to lose that, but when it's just him reading, more often than not, I'll listen to the first little bit, and then it's okay. There's not going to be anything different that I haven't heard, and then skip it from there. But I do at least give the first little bit a listen, whereas with ATP, I typically just skip them altogether.
So that brings me to a really important question, and that is, if you're watching a sports game and your team is significantly ahead or significantly behind, and there's no way that result is going to change, do you stop watching the game?
No, I still let it play, but I may shift my focus and do other things. Like I still keep an eye on it. I still watch the game and follow it, but not necessarily with 100% focus.
If you were at a baseball game, let's say you were at a Barons game, so it's not even like a Major League Baseball game,
I don't even pay attention to a Barons game if I'm there. Like at this point, the only time I go to a Barons game is when I'm given free, food and drinks, and I'm just there for the food and drinks. I'm not even paying attention to the game.
All right. Well, if you were at a Major League Baseball game, would you leave before the game was over?
No.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty adamant that any sporting event or anything that I follow enough to go to a game or watch it for that matter, since it's kind of the same litmus test. I'm going to watch the entire game, or I'm going to be mostly present for the entire game. If it's a good game, I'll be 100% focused on what's happening. If it's relatively, let's just say it's halfway through and, one team's up far enough that I know it's not going to really matter, I will still follow and pay attention, but I will at least engage in general conversation or, maybe get up and walk around for a minute or two here and there. Like it's no longer 100% I'm focused on every action. It's more I'm cognizant of what's occurring and enjoying other things in addition to that.
Yeah, that's about how I treat it. The only game I've ever left before the game was over was a Barons game. Because I wasn't there for the game. The game was just happening in the background. I was there because people I knew invited me to go. So, but yeah, like if it's a good match, and even if I know one team isn't going to win over the other, if it's still like a really good match, and like you've got like the team that's losing fighting to get the goal, or maybe it's not even an equalizing goal, but they just haven't given up, and it's a good game. I will watch that game with intent or intently watch the game. But if it's Arsenal, it's my team playing, and they've secured the win because they have enough goals that it's unlikely that they'll lose. I will pay attention to. I'll keep the game on and keep an eye on the game, but I will pay attention to other things as well. So I'm in good company.
Yeah, I think the only couple of times I remember leaving early, one was a Barons game, a similar type thing. Like we were invited for company, like mingling, etc. with. So like I was only there to be a add-on and enjoy the time and company. I didn't watch any of the game whatsoever that I recall. Anyway, so we left at some point before the game was over. I don't even know if it was seventh inning or second. I know it wasn't second just because of the amount of time we were there. But I literally just wasn't paying attention to the game. And then when the U.S. women's team came and played at Legion Field, we left early. But that's only because Emily was 7 months pregnant.
Oh yeah.
8. I don't know. It was long enough that it was like, all right, I just can't deal with being here any longer. I need to go. So all right, no problem. They were playing a youth team that wasn't even the original team that they were scheduled to play. They were scheduled to play Australia, and the Australian women's team went on strike, and so they got, I don't know if it was Haiti or Panama. I don't remember who the opponent was. It was an opponent that there was no way they were going to beat the women's team, and knew that going in. It wasn't even going to be a relatively competitive match, and I was still paying attention to it as long as I could up until we left, just from a physically, all right, I have to get out of the sun and et cetera type standpoint.
Well, there's a lot of grace given to a pregnant woman, so
yeah,
totally understandable. I think one of the most fun games I went to, I saw the men's team play Guatemala in 2005, and it was, what made it so good was that it was a qualifier for the World Cup and not just an exhibition. And when something, I guess exhibitions are fun, but when it matters, it makes such a big difference.
Oh, definitely. That it's like it's been interesting, a year ago this week ish is when we were in Europe, and so seeing memories pop up on Facebook, or I use day one for journaling, and it has a similar type thing of on this day. And I remember in our planning, the week we were there, think I don't remember who we were playing, but it was an away match. I remember that because that was why we decided not to worry about trying to secure tickets, because it was just, yeah, if as much as I would like to go to a match, let's just go to the stadium and enjoy it, and not kind of plan a trip around trying to uh, be in a stadium to watch a match. But it's one of those things that would have been phenomenal, and I know it would have been a drastically different experience than any other football game I've attended.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen Barcelona play twice, and it's just, I mean, it's cool to see them play, but it's just not as, they were playing the Red Bulls, so it's just like such a lopsided match, and two, it wasn't for anything, and you don't, I can't blame those players for not, giving 100%. One, they didn't have to, and two, it wasn't for anything. So seeing a game where something is on the line is just, I'd love to see a European game where something is on the line, because I've never. So maybe one day.
Yeah, the interesting byproduct of seeing all these particular memories pop up is I sorely miss the time that I was able to spend over in Europe, and I want to go back so bad again now, and it's gonna have to happen.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's nothing else to it. Like I have to get back.
Yeah, I can. I've been noticing on the outdoor trips and travel section, the Bullet Point St. Lucia and that hike, and uh, you being in better shape. I mean, you go back there, it would be I gotta imagine it's going to be a slightly different, maybe more than slightly different experience. Just
So I have an interesting side story. When we went to St. Lucia, I had been doing some workouts in general. Prior to that, I was working my way through P90X again, and felt like I was in pretty good shape. But the interesting thing is, after we got back, it was not even a couple of weeks later that I was in the hospital having my gallbladder removed.
oh wow,
And I can only imagine how much of an impact that had on my ability to perform the hike in general, but two, how thankful I was that I didn't have to have it removed while I was in St. Lucia, versus being able to at least get back to the States, because I had no indication otherwise. It was after we got back, I started having some issues with what I thought were just kind of bloated type feeling, etc., just pressure, right? And it might have been a little over a couple of weeks. I'd have to go back and look at timing, but it was close.
yeah,
And the reasons that it was removed were twofold. I had gallstones and I had an infected gallbladder. And so the combination of the two, it was like, no, we're just going to remove it. And how much did that affect my ability to exert any type of physical activity? It's a question mark, because I don't know, did it really, I'm sure it affected me somehow, but I don't know to what extent it affected me. And so I don't know if I were to go back now, one, not having the gallbladder issues, and two, being in better shape again, would I find it that difficult? And it's certainly a fascinating question. I think I would either way, because that was just a bitch of a hike.
I don't know. I don't. It will be difficult for sure, but I don't. I think you would find that you have more ease, and just because um, a trained cardiovascular system is going to make a big difference. I I was exercising. I was swimming 3 times a week prior to going on that hike, and even though I was doing that and I had hiked I would hike around Ruffner Mountain and Oak Mountain, and done so with ease. Like there wasn't a hike. There's not a hike on either of those places that were so strenuous, and both even like the hardest hikes at Oak Mountain or Ruffner Mountain are easier than like this hike I did in Arkansas, and that first section of the Gros Piton was harder than the hard hike I did in Arkansas, and I can't. The only thing I can think of that would have made that easier is having lost weight, because if you think about it, it's like even if you have your cardiovascular system in tip-top shape, because you can have a good you can have your cardiovascular system in tip-top shape but still be in a place where you could lose extra pounds. And I think that extra weight makes a huge difference. I remember thinking about it because whenever someone talks about dropping their base weight on a pack, it's like you could drop it. If you had a 30-pound base weight and then you went to a 15-pound base weight, that makes a big difference. But if you're like 50 pounds overweight and you drop 50 pounds, that would make a much bigger difference. So I think you've lost 45 pounds. I think you would definitely find a bigger difference there.
Probably. I guess the biggest reason I'm somewhat skeptical of it, that the first part to me wasn't so bad. It was after having some time in the last third, I guess, of the hike. Maybe not even that much. The part that I remember really, really well is the mango tree from that point to the top. Just felt like it was take 20 steps, rest. Take 20 steps, rest. It felt like it was a very iterative, I'm not sure I can keep pushing through type feeling. But then with a little bit of rest, it's like, okay, I can go. And I think that's more just muscle endurance in general, which is an area that I've always struggled with. So, like looking at plyometric training or any of the high-intensity type workouts, I still struggle immensely with anything that requires me to exert relatively powerful motions like jumping for more than 30, 45 seconds. I just get ridiculously exhausted. But then if I rest for 10, 15 seconds, I can start up again. And it's that aspect of fitness that I have not been able to increase to the point where I feel like it would make something like hiking different.
Yeah, that was my experience, and I think there would be a big difference. Like you lose 45 pounds, there's going to be a big difference. I just don't think that difference is going to be recognized on the day of the hike for the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah, that I could definitely see, because over time, I'm certainly able to do more jumps or whatever measurement you want to use. I'll just use jumps because it's simple. But I can certainly do more in a 45 second to 60 second window with more intensity than I could 5 months ago. It's just whether, even though I can notice a difference, it's not that it's that big a difference, not
Right.
yet. And so to me, a lot of it is just that explosiveness needed to be able to. Explosiveness is probably the wrong word, but it's the same concept where if you're making a step up a flight of steps or whatever, it's still an explosive movement for the duration of that step, right? And so the endurance needed to maintain repetitive explosive movements, that's more the issue that I don't see a big increase with yet, even though in general I do see an increase in my ability to continue those with minimal rest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was just thinking about the fittest I ever was summer after my freshman year of college. I remember like when I graduated from high school, I wasn't like terribly unfit. It's just I got a lot fitter, and I remember when I started my freshman year of college, I was actually even like started the second semester, and during that second semester of my freshman year, I remember losing 60 pounds. One was I went on a really restrictive diet, not intending to, but looking back, I created this really restrictive diet for myself, and I ran every day. I was running like 16 miles a week, and I can remember that summer being asked to go play soccer with my uncle, and I remember going out on the field and playing and running, just playing the game like normal, and just like stopping, and my breathing my breathing didn't change. There wasn't a point during that, I think we played for 2 hours, that I ever got winded. And I remember that being like amazing. But it was because I had done months worth of running before that and got conditioned in that way. So I think that if instead of whatever workout routine you've been doing for yourself, if you went up and down that mountain once a day for the past 5 months, then the difference would be realized because you got used to it.
Yeah, I could see that for sure, because that certainly would be why, like, the guides who go up 2, maybe 3 times a day, they could walk it far more often than that and not have an issue. And it's just because they're used to walking that, or they're used to the reaction of what that means on their body on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I remember my guide, he had to be in his early 20s, and he said he used to walk it twice a day, and he's just like, I only do it once a day. Yeah, and I think it's more like probably he's got better things to do, but he said he'd be tired after doing it twice a day, and I'm like, yeah. It doesn't matter. At some point, it doesn't matter what good a shape you're in. You're gonna find something that tires you.
Well, that's like with this particular past few months. The first phase that I started with was, all right, I'm just gonna shred weight. I'm not gonna worry about endurance, muscle, anything. It's just I've got to get the weight down to what level I want to start with. So that's phase 1. And so it was restrict diet to more high protein than carb, but not really trying to follow a specific diet. It was more, with everything that I log, I just want more protein than I have carbs. I don't care if it's 1 gram more. It's just that's my target. And so the first 3 months were as much protein as I felt like I could get in, and trying to cap it at 1,500 to 1,700 calories a day. And if I went over because I just was hungry, that's fine. But that was my target. And so whatever I could find that would make me feel full on that number of calories per day is what I kind of gravitated toward for the first, I'm going to say 3 months. I don't think it was quite that long. And that was entirely focused around just shredding weight with whatever I was doing from an exercise perspective, and realizing that this was a temporary diet change, because the one thing that I refused to do is say I'm going to make whatever I eat now be what I eat for the rest of my life. I don't subscribe to that theory. And so after I reached the point where I had dropped the weight that I wanted to drop, which was when I hit 160 pounds, it's like, all right, so now everything I wanted to eat is on the table. Now it's a matter of what do I need to do from a physical perspective to be able to eat whatever I want to eat. And the interesting thing is I found that what that led to was actually a more conscientious choice of cutting out sugars here and there where it made sense. Like if we're going to cook something, or if we can bake something, whatever the case may be, if we can substitute something like monk fruit instead of sugar, or maybe mix half monk fruit, half sugar, just to keep it in a more contained or lower calorie count, but have the same taste and flavor profile and everything else, well, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? And so that became kind of the method of, all right, I'm going to make this recipe, but instead of using a loaf of bread, I'm going to use this recipe for keto-friendly or paleo-friendly, whatever additional item, just to see how it tastes. And, oh, well, hey, that actually works out really well. I like that better. All right, well, okay, that's the way we're going to do it from this point forward. And so I know I mentioned the pizza thing. We've done 2 variants. One of those is with a keto-friendly, like almond flour flatbread type base, and one is using like the sausage type base. And both of those are better, to me at least, than just buying pizza. So why wouldn't I go with the variant that's going to be better for me from a dietary perspective?
Absolutely. And I think that's like, I think that most people don't look that far in advance when they are trying to lose weight. I certainly haven't, and I'm just sitting here like, making mental notes. That phase 1, phase 2, that's a great idea. And just instead of like probably the way I was or the way I've been trying to approach it is to do all of the things, like build muscle, build endurance, increase fitness, lose weight, all at the same time, because they go hand in hand. But if you're focusing, it's so obvious, like once it's been said to me, but it just makes so much more sense. If you target weight loss, if your goal is weight loss in the first phase of getting healthy, that makes so much sense, because when you weigh less, you can do more. Like even if your base is the same, someone who is not carrying extra weight can do more, even though even though they may be the same level of fit.
Yeah, I found that it was the only way that I could reconcile the issues that I had with wanting some measurable amount of progress with being willing to accept restrictions. So my mentality, if I'm 4 weeks in to trying to do something, and for 2 weeks I've had no net change, or a negative change from the standpoint of like if I was using weight as a measurement. So let's just say for the first 2 weeks I dropped weight and then I started gaining weight again. Even though logically I may know that that's a change between fat mass and muscle mass, like I need some sort of reinforcement, or it's just like what am I doing? Right. And so the very first thing that I had to accept was, all right, I'm going to give from now until December 31st, or whatever the time frame was. Like for me, I just chose December 31st. It's like I'm going to do what I'm going to do for this time frame and see what happens on that date. Like I don't care about any measurement in between. It's just I'm starting now and I'm not stopping until I hit that date. So the first thing was just mapping out time frame. And then second kind of thought process was, okay, I know that I'm not going to do it all at once. Like logically, I know that that's just unreasonable. So what should I do first? And my thought there was, well, if I'm going to make a change to what I eat, drink, do, I would rather that be short-lived and the most compressed and upfront amount of time. So it's all right. That means that I'm willing to accept any and all restrictions I can think of to place on diet for a 3-month window. And let's just see where I am after those 3 months. And it didn't take that long. I was actually surprised with how quick things dropped when I was that managerial, I guess, of diet, where I was logging everything and really being cognizant of what I was eating and drinking, etc. I was surprised at how quick or how well I can manipulate feeling satisfied and not desiring something with a restrictive diet. But I knew that that was not a scenario that I wanted to be in for a prolonged period of time, much less a lifestyle change. Like I very much knew it was let's get to a target weight and then we'll just add different things in and just make sure that I continue to log it until the end of my December 31st mark, regardless of what it is that I'm consuming. That way I know I have data to say this type of day affected me in this way, or whatever the case may be. So like even today, I have logged everything, even though I'm well over 2,500 calories, but I don't care. It's just I need the historical record, because if tomorrow I'm suddenly 3 pounds heavier than I was, I can go back and look at today and say, oh, well, this is why. My activity level was the same, but my diet was horrible. And so in the future, when I do want to have these types of things, I just need to know that I need to make it 3 or 4 days apart, or a week apart, or whatever the case may be. Just some, I'm not going to call it scientific because it's not that rigorous, but some level of applying the theory and methodology to understanding what my dietary choices affect.
I can see, I mean, that's really great, and I can see how that could be actually even really helpful. Like, not even like I gained a little extra weight over this, but like I felt bad after I ate that food, or I felt good after I ate that food. I can see how that could be like really beneficial.
Yeah, I know there are a couple of different articles that I've seen that have talked about, if you're going to do that, also record notes or different indicators of how you felt the next day and that kind of thing. I haven't gone that far, just because I haven't felt like I've had a really off day up until yesterday, surprisingly. So yesterday I was suddenly weighing in 3 pounds heavier than I had the day before. And I've never had that type of fluctuation day to day. And then this morning, I was back to 3 pounds lighter. Like it was very much a yesterday thing. And I still haven't figured out why.
Interesting.
My normal fluctuation day to day is half a pound, roughly. Sometimes I hit a pound, but it's rare. Most of the time, it's that half a pound mark that I can pretty well count on. I'm either going to be over or under, and most of the time, it's based on how much I exerted myself in the workout the day prior. If I had a really high intensity workout where I really got my heart rate up, I'm probably going to drop a half a pound to a pound. And if I kind of breezed through it more, I'm probably going to be either level with where I was the day before, or I might gain a half a pound back. I've noticed that my diet doesn't seem to influence my weight change near as much as I thought it would. It's very much activity level for me, which is great. It's something I feel like I have better control over. But then I have these random days like yesterday where there's a 3 pound swing and I don't understand what's going on. And I measured on 2 different scales, and both scales measured like that big a difference. And it continues to blow my mind.
Well, do you feel like you had, well, no, I'm not even going to ask that question.
No,
or if you want to edit this part out, but it's like, do you feel like you had a 3 pound BM in the last 24 hours?
And like that, Emily and I were talking about it earlier. It's like, did I consume more salt? Like, did I just retain more water or something over that course of 24-ish hours? Because it literally, there's no difference that I can point to, except that my workout the day before was a light jog because we went to Tannehill and did things. And so it was like, well, if I just jog in a U shape from kitchen to master bedroom for like 45 minutes, I'll get my calorie number for the day. And it's not something I enjoy doing, so I tend to avoid it. And so I don't put near as much effort into it. But still, from a net calorie burn perspective, I still got the calories burned. I just didn't get the heart rate up. It wasn't as intense a workout. That's the only difference I can point to. But I've had similar days of lower intensity where I did not have that weight gain over the past, 4 months, with similar levels of what I consumed from a dietary perspective. It just, every time I think of, okay, maybe this was different, I go back and look at the data that I've got, and it's like, well, no, it's not that different than this day. So I still haven't figured it out. I'm sure it's some ridiculously simple explanation, and it could very well just be a ridiculous matter of timing and the way I normally would weigh at that point of the day, and I'm off by 30 minutes or something, and who knows.
Yeah, it's like 3 pounds is significant, like, for a fluctuation in weight. And so to go up 3 pounds and then down 3 pounds in 48 hours is kind of like, whoa, what is that? And so,
Yeah. And that's why I've been trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And because trend-wise, for the 5 days previous and most likely the 5 days following, since we're not far enough through that, I can't really say for sure. But the 5 days previous, it was a 3/4 to half a pound-ish fluctuation over every couple of days, and it was up and down. And that's kind of what I expect, because I've reached a point where I'm pretty much capable of, regardless of what I eat, regardless of exactly what workout I do, just being active and being mindful of not, grabbing M&Ms or, something else. I'm been able to stay in the 155 to 158 range now for 3 weeks consistently without really caring. And so to have all of a sudden in the middle of that, this big spike and then drop has made me just want to figure it out. It's more one of those things where, sure, it's an abnormality. I can write it off. I don't really have to care about it, but I would really like to understand it because it's strange. I haven't seen that any other day over a 5-month period.
no,
So
it's totally
what is,
interesting.
yeah. Eventually I'll figure it out, I hope. But
I do. I mean, it's like, I remember when you told me you first had been you lost all this weight and you were doing all this stuff, and I was like, that's so great, that's awesome. This should be an inspiration to me. But then hearing your methodology is definitely been interesting and gotten my mind working. I was like, oh, I've been overcomplicating this in my life, and I'm gonna work out my phase 1 and phase 2. But when you're with your recording of what you've been eating, what are you using to record this? Where are you putting this information?
MyFitnessPal.
MyFitness what?
MyFitnessPal. The app that Under Armour bought, just because it has so far the most concise or widespread library of commercially available foods. So when you search for a food to add to it, either via barcode or even Chick-fil-A's menu, for example, more often than not, you at least get a comparable result, if not the exact identical result from what's published.
Very cool.
And it's the only one so far that I've been able to pretty much consistently get the result that I need. It's nice that you can add, if you have the nutritional value information in front of you, you can just add it in real quick. It's not a big deal. But I've only had to do that for 3 or 4 items that I can remember. Things like the Publix bakery bread, that's not going to be in there because it can vary a little bit. And so I just put the nutritional sticker info in as a custom food, and then it's there and available anytime I need it. I've been surprised. I mean, there are a lot of things where you can tell that manufacturers have tweaked their ingredients, and things are either lower calorie or lower carb or better in general than whatever pulls up if you scan the barcode. Um, for example, Emily's been shopping at Aldi a lot more because the one that opened on 150 has a decent selection as opposed to whatever one she tried prior. And there's a particular flatbread that she's been picking up that if you scan the barcode, all of the numbers are higher than they are for the current iteration, which is just a matter of the current iteration was a refined, recipe that they've released that just hasn't made its way into the database.
Cool. I just happened to notice MyFitnessPal in the show notes here.
Yeah. Speaking of, we've probably gone on long enough.
I know. I was just thinking. I was like, there might be enough for like 2 shows here.
Probably. I know the first concern is just understanding editing and making sure we have a good, solid recording. Is there anything else that we actually need to legitimately cover other than trying to finally outline some show notes for the next couple of episodes and just assume it's either weekly or bi-weekly, or like what kind of... I think the schedule is more the question that we need to iron out than the topics.
Well, I was going to say, like, weekly is fine. Like, Tuesday nights are fine. I can do Tuesday nights every week. I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with it too. So
I feel like weekly is it's a good... I feel like that's a good thing. And I think we could... I mean, this could be... I like your episode 0000. And we could update the episode show notes with what we did talk about in there. And then we can start adding in notes for episode 1. And,
yeah, that
so that we have like an agenda or an outline to follow next week.
Yeah, so episode 1 and 2, I put some notes in, but it wasn't so much what I felt like I wanted to talk about. It was more, this is an idea of kind of how to template it. And so I was just using what was on the mind at the time that I wrote the notes. So we can very easily remove or even follow what's there. It doesn't matter. It was more just trying to kind of get in my head, what does it look like to have show notes?
Yeah.
Since I've never had to do them before.
Yeah, well, I like that in episode 1, Manchester City Can Go to Hell is still there. I think that will always be relevant.
Oh, it'll really be relevant if they go ahead and buy Messi.
Oh my God, did their ban to the Champions League stay in effect?
Oh no, it got overturned.
Yeah,
they appealed, and they got something like a €10,000 fine or something. Like
that's not even a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that low. I'm exaggerating it to an extent, but it was the equivalent of not even a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, that's. I should read about that because I just like, you know what, I'm not paying attention to this right now.
It was very much. I saw a quote from I think it was actually Klopp that mentioned it. It was like basically. FFP is dead now thanks to this ruling.
I like Klopp so much. I really like Klopp so much.
The more that I watch and read about his mannerisms outside of what we see, the more I think that what we see is legitimately what he is. You know, it's like you always wonder a little bit how much of a figure's public persona is how they are privately. And the more that I read and the more that I see and listen to and hear, etc., from different channels, like seeing Klopp run out onto the pitch when we managed to win against Everton with that last minute goal. It's him. It's who he is. He brings that level of passion and energy across the board, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean Liverpool. I mean he's done such good things for Liverpool. I was just thinking he's the antithesis of Jose Mourinho. So, uh, yeah, the guy is he's a cool guy. He's a really cool guy. He's done a really good job with that club, and I think he's gonna keep on. And um, yeah, I just a lot of admiration for that guy. I hope Arteta can do something similar for Arsenal.
One thing that I've noticed is that Arteta and Lampard both, even though they're not quite as collected as some of the others, you can tell there's a youthfulness to their maturity in the role of management in general. But they seem to bring the same mindset, which I'd like seeing quite a bit. Which is, you know what? Let's give the youngsters a shot. Let's bring it, or let's focus on what we have available and what the promise that we see, and let's see if it plays out.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and how much of that is required just because of the lack of financial capability in the market or whatever.
Well, I mean, Lampard and Arteta are our age. I think he's like a year older than you, and Arteta's a year younger than me. So it's just like, yeah, Klopp has got just a little more experience, and I think that does make a difference. I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken in looking at age as a common factor between Lampard and Arteta, but I don't know. You got it. I was gonna say like maybe Klopp is just a little more not subdued, but like he's been doing this for longer. He's probably been doing it for 5-10 years longer than either Lampard or Arteta, and so he's just like, yeah, I've already done this part yet, and so we're seeing him in a more refined. He's a more refined manager. So,
I think that certainly is accurate, because if you look at just the time that he spent over Borussia and the similar type of adversity as far as cost and or available funds, I guess, as compared to I'm drawing a blank. Who's the big German team? Not Borussia.
No, Bayern.
And trying to compete with Bayern when Bayern had significantly larger pockets, similar to City or whoever you want to pick. I think it's more a matter of his move from Bayern to Liverpool, or not Bayern, Borussia to Liverpool, just feels like more of the same. It's I'm sure a more competitive league in general, because you have more teams that are capable of performing at a specific level. But I think to him, it's more a matter of, this feels familiar. This feels like what I'm accustomed to. It's just a different place. And so he learned his lessons in the Bundesliga and is now just applying those in the Premier League and seeing whether they need tweaking or modification. It's not like he's having to come up with the game plan from the beginning again. He already has an established idea. It's just, all right, what little things do I need to tweak versus you can tell with Lampard specifically that it's completely overhauling the way Chelsea played. Like they don't play anything at all like they did a couple of seasons ago. To be fair, I haven't paid as much attention to the way Arsenal have been playing, but under Arteta it seems more practical and less flashy from what I have paid attention to. And I think that that's more where the difference comes in. With Klopp, he already knew what he needed to work out, and it was just executing it. Whereas Lampard and Arteta were trying to figure out kind of exactly how to work it out, and are now in the process of refining that execution. And so he's just got a head start.
Yeah, well, the thing that Arsenal needed and what Arteta is accomplishing is that they're playing with more cohesiveness, and that's got to be his phase one for that club. And maybe we can get back into the Champions League after next season.
Well, I think you got to shore up Luiz first, but
oh my, don't even. I will say, like, if we get in the Champions League, it's probably going to be by way of the Euro Cup.
I will say that Aubameyang, I haven't seen a more prolific, more energetic striker in a while.
I hope we can hold on to him because he's a world-class striker, and it's really nice to see, like, after Henry left Arsenal, there was a huge vacuum left by him, his departure. And a lot of it was like his departure was necessary because he became sort of too big for that club because Arsene Wenger's strategy was to hire talent that he knew were going to be big later. Like he wasn't spending a lot of money on the big players. He was spending money on players that he believed were going to be really good. But the problem was, you've got Thierry Henry up front, and everybody's like passing the ball to him because he was such a prolific striker, and it just became detrimental to the club. Henry actually needed more talent around him, and it was an imbalance. So he had to leave, and it's nice to see another really good striker there.
It's one thing that I am interested to see how the first part of the season plays out. At the end of last season, it was like Mane was the in-form. You just couldn't imagine him not being able to do whatever he wanted with the ball. Whereas the first part of the season, it felt more like it was Salah, who you just never saw do something wrong. And I think that's part of the strategy, is that having two people up front that are that good when they're on allows you to weather the periods of time where they just don't seem to be clicking very well. The problem is that it breaks down when Firmino is not having a good game, because he is the link up between either of those two 90% of the time. And so if you're not building more from midfield or having Robertson or Alexander-Arnold on the wings being able to feed them in, then you really have a single point of failure still with Firmino in that central role if he can't provide some level of contribution and getting it to either of those two, and picking which of those two based on who's in form. And I don't know how much of that is also just overthinking it or over analyzing the way the season played out, but it really has begun to feel like the whole reason Mane and Salah are as good as they are on their good days is because they tend to have their good days opposite the other. And it's rare for them both to be clicking so well on the same day. Whereas like the Crystal Palace game that I mentioned, after the coronavirus break, it was one of the few times that I remember everybody up front just absolutely having a phenomenal showing.
Yeah, it's the fall of Manchester United after the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson has made me realize that I really, really do not know all the dynamics into making a winning team. And so to sort of like understand the nuance of like, why are you good on this day and why are you good on that day is I don't know. Maybe one of them like mysteriously weighed 3 pounds heavier and then 3 pounds lighter in a 48-hour period. I don't know. So and much less with like a pandemic going on. But I mean, I guess that was that dynamic was playing out before the pandemic. But yeah, it is more of a mystery to me than I initially thought. So because at some point it's like, what, you just score goals. That's all you got to do is like score some goals.
So yeah, like in our case, how many times can you hit it and it go an inch wide or bounce off the woodwork?
Apparently a lot.
Yeah, they're very frustratingly so in some games. But a large part of it I've also come to realize is how much of it is just the quality of the pass to you. I don't think I ever put as much emphasis on that until I saw some of the little differences this past season, like Alisson's ball into Salah against United famously, just the way it was perfectly weighted and it happened to fall exactly where he needed it to fall. And you're talking about things that are less than an inch different can drastically affect the outcome. I think I've started to appreciate more what it means to have that little bit of spin, or if it has a deflection or something else like that makes it that much more difficult to finish, where I didn't notice that part from the finishing perspective prior.
Oh, totally. It's like where you are in your stride when the ball hits the ground or you make your first touch it seems like it wouldn't make that much of a difference, but I think it makes all the difference. I remember a few years, maybe like, oh gosh, it might be 15 years ago, Nike posted a video on YouTube. It was the first YouTube video that had 1 million views, and it was a video of Ronaldinho at the Camp Nou, just kind of playing around. It wasn't even practice; he was just playing around, and then some Nike representative brings him a brand new pair of shoes. It was they were boots that were had his name on them, and he puts them on, and he's like taking the ball. He's juggling. He had fantastic juggling skills, and he's just like popping the ball, hitting the crossbar so that the ball comes right back to him, so that he can continue to juggle the ball. And he does that maybe a dozen times. It's just hitting the crossbar so that it comes right back at him so that he can catch it with his feet again. And it's just like, oh my God. And then to see him play at that time for Barcelona and not be able to make every single goal. Yeah. The fact that ball delivery makes a difference, the positioning of the defenders, all of that goes into play. And I think it's demonstrated, like he could demonstrate that, yeah, if I have the ball and nobody's bothering me, yeah, I will score a goal every single time. I can hit the same tiny spot every single time. But all of those other things make a vast difference on whether or not you're going to even score a goal.
Yeah, I think this past season was just a good kind of eye-opening perspective of some of the little things that I had taken for granted, especially with regard to that.
Well, we're at 2:51.
Yeah, I was noticing it's about 5 hours before I have to get up. So
yeah, I got to be up in 6 hours. So no, I'm at 5 hours too. I can't math right now. So So, how do you want these files sent to you?
I actually have no clue what the best way is going to be. I don't know. I think it's a problem for in the morning.
All right. I'll send you a message.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed being able to have a conversation again. It's been too long.
This will be a weekly thing, and maybe we should partake in an outdoor drink at some point in time soon.
JF and I were actually just talking about that a couple of days ago. We were thinking that we should resume healthy pours from a physically safe distance.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah, we'll arrange something soon.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night.
Good night.